Felicity, hello, good morning. Can you just say who you are and where you're from?
Hi there. Yes, I asked to join as a public observer for this meeting.
Okay.
I've recently stopped full-time work as a director in financial services, and I'm interested in knowing more about local NHS trust boards in case I might decide to do
That's
some
fine.
non-exec work in the future. And I thought this would be a good way to understand a bit more about what you guys do. If
That's
that's okay.
fine. Thank you. That's fine. Just the process is that you have to remain silent during the meeting.
Oh no, I understand.
So
Yeah.
that's all right. No, just to avoid any embarrassment.
Go back on mute.
Okay, I think we're all sort of here, so we might as well get started. I think my son is just going to come back in. Okay. Well, good morning, everyone. I don't think there are any questions from the public, are there, Julie?
No, there was a question, but it related to social care, so that's been redirected.
Okay, all right. Apologies.
Rajiv Gaffer.
Oh, yeah. Thank you very much. Declarations of any other business or of interest in the agenda? Minutes of the 13th of May, any corrections, please? Okay. Action log and matters arising. I think there's nothing particularly outstanding. No. Okay, in which case, item 6, then I'll hand over to Debbie, please.
Thanks, Martin. So Amy, who has been a patient with us in the past and is now supporting us as a lived experience worker with Culture of Care, was really keen to share her story from a patient perspective about some of her experiences when she was a patient in Prospect Park, and also some of what she's doing now. Unfortunately, she's not able to be here today, but she has done a video for us, which is brilliant. I've had a look at it this morning, and so we will Versha has kindly joined to play that, and then if there are any questions, we will happily attempt to answer them, probably between Versha, Teresa and myself. we'll do our best, but it's a very good, heartfelt story. So I'm going to hand over to Versha. Versha, I don't know if you want to introduce yourself.
I can, yeah. So I'm Versha. I'm the Associate Nurse Consultant for Adult Inpatients at Prospect Park Hospital. And I worked with Amy when she was admitted to Snowdrop some years ago, and currently working alongside her to support whilst she's supporting Sorrel with the Culture of Care work at PPH. So I'm going to share her video, and I'm hoping that you'll be able to see the video but also hear it. So just let me know if you can't hear it. And it's silent just for the first couple of seconds, but I'm hoping you can also see my screen.
We can.
Can you hear?
No.
Okay.
It did work earlier when I played it, though.
Yeah, I think it's to do with the way that I share, but I don't know how to do it in a way that you're going to be able to then hear her talking, which is a bit frustrating. Okay. There we go. Okay, hopefully.
Admissions to Prospect Park Hospital across both.
Can you turn it up a fraction, though?
Of
Amy?
course I can.
I'm now using my experience with the team at Prospect Park in the Culture of Care project. I've struggled with my mental health for as long as I can remember.
Does that work?
I've been under mental health service.
Was that loud enough, Debbie?
Yeah, that's fine.
Yes, it's fine for me.
Okay, fabulous. So I'll just go back to the beginning.
My name is Amy Forrester and I'm 27 years old. I've had multiple admissions to Prospect Park Hospital across both the acute and PQ wards, and I'm now using my experience to aid the team at Prospect Park in the Culture of Care project. I've struggled with my mental health for as long as I can remember. I've been under mental health services since I was 12 years old, and I had 4 CAMHS admissions. I had another 4 admissions in adult services before being admitted to Prospect Park Hospital. I had a 2-year admission, which was mostly spent at Prospect Park, with 2 out-of-area PQ admissions in that time, followed by transfer back to Prospect Park onto Sorrel ward, and finally I stepped down to Snowdrop ward. I was discharged from Snowdrop in March 2020. and I've had no psychiatric admission since. I'm not who I was predicted to be. I was told I would be a revolving door patient, that I'd never survive in the community, that there was nothing that would make me better, that I would be severely and chronically mentally ill, that discharge from hospital would result in death, and that I would likely remain in hospital for many years. It was extremely distressing to be told at such a young age, whilst already in a depressive state, that there was little hope for my future, that the best that could be done was risk management and occasional positive risk taking. I felt hopeless, and the only messages I could take from this were that there was no point to my existence and it was never going to get better. I succumbed to the life that had been paved out for me. I didn't see the point in trying to fight if there was no chance that I would win the battle. There was no light bulb moment, no miracle drug, no particular therapy provided. But gradually my perspective changed. These professionals knew my diagnosis, my case number, my history, and my risks, but they didn't know me, and no one can predict the future. So I decided to write my own story. At the end of the day, nobody but me had the power to do that. Imagine you've just been detained against your will. You arrived in the back of a van, locked in a cage. You have no idea of your surroundings. There was no window in the back of the ambulance to see out of. You're told where you're going and maybe how long the journey will take, but in the back of a van with only your thoughts to keep you company, time becomes a strange and stretched concept. You are taken from the back of the ambulance inside a hospital which you had never even heard of until today. With a paramedic at each arm and hospital staff crowded around you, you're directed through the maze of identical corridors. You have no belongings with you, your shoes are taken from you, you're searched and metal detected. Eventually, you're shown to your bedroom. 4 white walls and a bed that doesn't move, a plastic mattress, a single blanket and pillow, and suddenly you're alone. The thoughts that led to your detention are now the only thing you have left. No items of comfort, no distractions, no phone charger, no headphones, not a single familiar face. Alarms blaring, patients screaming, raised voices, a TV turned up too loud, running footsteps, and a window that barely opens. And there's nothing that you can do about any of it. What would you want most in that situation? I remember one of my first nights at Prospect Park. I hadn't left my room, hadn't eaten, hadn't slept properly, hadn't had much contact with anyone. A support worker came to check on me. She didn't just look at me through the window in my door like most of the staff had. She knocked and entered my room. She asked if I was okay, and she seemed to genuinely care. The ward didn't seem quite so scary anymore. Another time, a support worker asked me if I needed an extra blanket. Another time, after noticing that I'd not eaten in days, I was offered some juice. These are seemingly tiny acts, but they are often the ones that mean the most. There were the support workers who knew to get me ice when I was distressed. There was the nurse who distracted me by watching pimple popping videos. The support worker who named my fidget toys after the staff on the ward. The support worker who would sing Lewis Capaldi with me in the shower when I was on one-to-one observations just to make the experience slightly more bearable. The staff who knew how to de-escalate me. The support worker who used to do little drawings of the staff for me while she was on my one-to-one. The consultant who took me out on leave himself, the ward manager who always had time for me, the psychiatrist who made sure she saw me at the same time each week, the support workers who knew when I was hiding something, and the staff who got to know my personality, not just my diagnosis. I didn't have many good times in this period of my life. There was little that I got enjoyment from or had the motivation to do. Whilst on Sorrow Ward, at probably the lowest point I had had in my battle with my mental health, I must have mentioned to someone that I played guitar. One day I walked into the activity room and there was the OTA with a guitar. I hadn't picked up a guitar since before I'd been admitted over a year before that. To start with, I was a little nervous, but I built up confidence until soon most of the staff had heard me singing along to the guitar. That little bit of thought had reminded me of who I was outside of the hospital walls. I remembered how much I enjoyed playing. I remembered who I was before I'd become so unwell. In those brief moments, I started to feel more like myself again. As you can imagine, over a solid two-year admission, there were many difficult moments for me and some conflicts with the nursing and consulting teams. Unfortunately, not all staff knew me or how best to support me, which could lead to escalating distress or behaviours. Not all doctors had the same opinions and not all staff had the same level of knowledge of mental health. In my own experience, there was an overuse of restraints. Due to my risk, I was often restrained for my own safety. In theory, this was the staff fulfilling their duty of care and ensuring my safety. However, I believe that more could have been done to de-escalate without the need for such measures. Because of my complex PTSD, touch is a difficult thing for me and can send me into a fight or flight response. Due to my autism, loud noises are extremely distressing. In the process of being restrained, you are physically pinned to the floor by sometimes 8 people. The alarms are blaring so that staff can respond to the incident. And sometimes you're injected against your will by having your trousers pulled down to administer the medication in your buttocks with staff of all genders in the room to hold you still. You lose any sense of dignity, and in a lot of cases, it can be re-traumatizing, or at the least, extremely distressing for the patient. Although in a lot of cases restraint was required, I do believe that sometimes it could have been avoided, as with the re-traumatization and further distress caused. Theory and experience are very different things. A nurse or support worker could have had all the training available, but they will still never truly understand what it's like to be the patient. This gap in knowledge would be present in any healthcare setting, but I think that having the lived experience feedback can help narrow the gap, help the staff to support the patients more effectively, and that could then positively impact the experience and outcomes of the patients. As part of the culture of care work that I've been involved in, I've been trying to give this perspective to the other team members. It has been well received by the team and taken on board. The culture of care work has been extremely empowering for me to be the voice that patients need and the voice that I too would have needed when I was a patient. The lived experience perspective is such a vital part of shaping services to provide appropriate care and understanding. Through the culture of care work, I feel my views are valued, and I'm also grateful to be able to give back to the service that helped me to save my own life. Nobody could do it for me. At the end of the day, it was up to me to force one foot in front of the other when I didn't feel I had the strength. But with the support of the teams at Prospect Park, I built up the courage to try. Despite the odds, I have remained determined. I now live independently and I can look after both myself and my cat. I still face struggles in day-to-day life, but I'm better equipped to handle them. There is still no miracle drug or life-changing therapy, but I survive through pure determination and sometimes a bit of spite to show that nobody is a lost cause, nobody is doomed to the walls of a psychiatric ward forever with certainty, and there will always be hope. After spending years in the system, having countless positive and negative experiences, and losing some of my closest friends to their mental health, I want to do anything and everything I can to better mental health services. I want to help services to understand their patients and their presentations better, and I want to use the experiences I've had over the years to improve the support given. I might just be one voice, but I'd like to think that that voice could start a domino effect. Maybe my singular voice could help multiple nurses, doctors, and support workers, and in turn, positively impact the support received by the current and future patients of Prospect Park Hospital. There is the quote, "In the world where you can be anything, be kind." The staff at Prospect Park couldn't make me better or even make me want to get better. But each of those seemingly tiny acts of kindness meant the world to me and taught me that maybe this world wasn't as bad as I'd thought. Thank you.
And just unshare. That's lovely. Well, what a powerful statement. I thought that was most impressive. Most thought-provoking. Versa, could you just say a little bit about the culture of care? Explain what it covers.
Yeah, of course. So the culture of care is something that we signed up with through NHS England around, I think, just over a year ago now. And it's something that we've been doing across all of the wards at Prospect Park. So they are all one way or the other involved in the culture of care and the work that we're doing, in essence, and as it kind of says on the tin, really, to I suppose reshape and kind of rethink the culture that we have as clinicians on the wards within our services and what we provide. So 3 of the wards, I believe, have been part of the culture of care from the beginning, and they've been making steps to improve patient experience, but equally to think through kind of how they themselves work as teams and how they can work better and continue to work better with one another. All of the wards have also had kind of these away days Culture of Care Away days, and that has been really kind of influential in supporting their teamwork and kind of team building, and again really kind of honing in on actually all of the strengths that each of the teams individually have, and then how they can all use that to work together to provide better patient experience. And they all have kind of workshops with facilitators through NHS England and the Culture of Care work streams. And alongside that, they are able to go to kind of national events. So each organisation that is part of the Culture of Care has their own specific, I can't kind of think of the name off the top of my head, but their own kind of cohort with different organisations who are also involved in the Culture of Care. And they have kind of, I think every quarter or every 6 months, kind of a forum that they're able to also share their ideas or what it is that they're implementing on their own wards with other organisations also involved in the Culture of Care. And Amy has been to kind of one of those conferences as well. So our lived experience practitioners who are involved in it are also equally able to have the opportunity to attend.
Thank you very much, Ursula. Aileen.
Hi, firstly, sorry, my camera isn't working now, but can I just say how amazing that was? I was completely moved listening to it. I had goose pimples. I just think it's amazing that she can get involved. My question that comes out of that, though, how do we support the individuals that are then back into a situation that is potentially quite traumatic and potentially triggering for them?
Yes, this is something that we've thought kind of really long and hard about. So as part of the kind of nurse consultant network, when the Culture of Care was kind of starting and we were starting to get lived experience kind of people in, we have been liaising with the patient experience team and just kind of working alongside them to make sure that the support was there. One of the things that we did particularly for Amy was to think through kind of what that support could look like for us. She's no longer working alongside this organisation in terms of her health and care needs, but because I was a familiar face for her and she was happy to be supported by me, I offer kind of some more informal support. So if there's anything that she ever feels that she needs to talk about, then she's welcome to reach out to me. And equally, I kind of check in with her. And then, yes, we're kind of liaising with the lived experience or the patient experience team, sorry, to make sure that we're not kind of going through any kind of re-traumatization, but equally leaving it really open for Amy particularly, and being able to share with her that if she does need to take a step back, then that's okay, or if she's not able to attend kind of various meetings and things like that, that's okay.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks, Aileen. Sonia. Sonia, you there? Sally, if you can, do you want to go? I think Sonia's frozen, so Sally.
Yeah. Can I ask you, Lucia, when I listened to Amy's story, which was so powerful, and she was obviously in Prospect Park for two years, is there any issue around staff witnessing such high levels of distress and trauma and the impact that has on them? You know, with the Culture of Care, obviously there's, you know, everything in terms of therapeutic environment and therapeutic use of self. But within that context, when you're working with somebody who's got such high levels of distress, that can sort of lead to burnout, can't it, with staff? What is there for the staff that actually helps them to cope with that degree of distress so that they can give their best for patients, service users like Amy?
Yeah, so there's a lot of evidence around kind of vicarious trauma and the impact that can have on staff, just from witnessing it themselves and then having to manage situations like that. So within the hospital, we do kind of have a lot of psychological well-being and a lot of support that's offered. So each of the wards, irrespective of kind of whatever they cater to, so older adults and adults, and our intensive care unit, all of the wards have access to something called space groups, and that runs either weekly or fortnightly. They've also got access to kind of PNAs, so that's to offer restorative supervision if it's needed, alongside kind of their own managerial or clinical supervision. And again, kind of as part of the nurse consultant network, we're on the wards quite a lot, and predominantly work clinically. So access to us and being able to offer that support is widely accessible, alongside all of the other kind of psychological well-being services that's offered within the organisation. And we're doing a huge amount of work at the moment, though it's tailored predominantly to staff assaults. Equally, still a lot of work on supporting staff if either an assault happens, but I suppose kind of intertwined with that would likely be the support that's offered through or to offer, sorry, in terms of psychological well-being and the impact of kind of witnessing self-harm or restraints.
I suppose we don't have any evidence in terms of impact that actually it stops attrition or staff feedback. We've got feedback around that to say that we've got all these things in, but they are helping.
Yeah, I'm not sure if we've necessarily got that feedback, at least as yet. And I think the culture of care work is still at a point where that isn't something that they're necessarily measuring. And I think actually some of the things they're looking at for the culture of care at the moment is specifically related to the kind of patient involvement and making sure that we're offering them a better experience.
Right. Thank you.
Thanks so much. Debbie, was your comment just on the same point? And then come to Rebecca.
Yeah, just to say, so Sally, we do have feedback from our Trust Wellbeing service, which is really highly rated, and a number of staff will be reaching out to that as well. So we do have from a wellbeing service, and I think we've seen into the board before the wellbeing quarterly report, which does include the feedback and the ratings that staff who use that service give it. So we have some
outcomes. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Rebecca.
Oh, thank you. Morning, everybody. Yeah, I agree with the other comments. The testimonial there was incredibly powerful. And, you know, many things have been very moving in that. But one of the things that she was saying about the use of restraints and the manner in which the restraint is carried out, I just wondered whether we have any reflective process after there has been an incident of restraint as to whether it was necessary. And I know that there is an element of marking one's own homework in that, but yeah, just strikes me as whether if each time on a regular basis we're looking at what could have been done differently, and if there was an alternative or excessive approach taken.
Yeah, we do a lot of work and have been doing a lot of work in the last kind of couple of years around debriefs. And that isn't just debriefs with staff in terms of kind of either what went well, what didn't, kind of what do we need to learn from, but equally we have that with patients. So it was part of a project that was run by a colleague for their masters, actually towards the latter part of last year. And it was specifically to make sure that we are getting information from patients in terms of that debrief with them after an incident of any force that's used. So we are kind of using that to then develop care plans and kind of looking at the advanced kind of care planning elements of that. And one of the things that actually, so one of the things that myself and Amy have equally spoken about, and equally through the culture of care, is also, so Amy's experience was from around 3-ish or 4, I think, if not longer, years ago. And actually, one of the things that we've spoken about through the culture of care is equally the fact that there has been, or there is, an observable difference in the amount of use of force that's used, in the fact that it has gone down. There's a lot of work that we've done within the inpatients over a fair number of years to reduce restrictive practices and equally use of force and restraints. And that is something that Amy's been able to kind of pick up, and equally the way in which kind of we talk about things as well, it's something that she has picked up on and feels there has been improvement comparatively to when she was an active patient with us.
That's great, thank you.
Thank you. Just Mark and Tolu, then we'd better move on, I think. Mark.
Thank you, Martin. Debbie, this is a question for yourself in terms of, that was a really good example of a lived experience person's input and benefit to the organisation. And I know that when I've been around a number of our services, I'm thinking recently in Slough with the peer group support and work that is done there with them. Do we have an overall record, or how many of these examples we have around the organisation where we're using that peer group support, because it can be so effective, as I've seen in the past?
Yes, we do. So from a Liz, from a patient experience perspective, we have a log of both our paid and our unpaid, so peer support lived experience workers. We've got around about, don't quote me exactly, but 58, and around about 30 of them are paid workers, and the others are unpaid, as in they're not as in employed by us as such. So it's about a 50-50 split, those that are employed by us into services, court divert for as an example, and those like Amy who are supporting us through a more of a volunteer, if you like, so paid for time and that sort of thing, but on a different scale to if you're employed by us. So yeah, quite a few, and ever in growing, which, you know, it does feed into helping and supporting our efforts in terms of co-production and our journey on that as well, Mark, which is really helpful. I think Amy's story, I met Amy before she did this, because obviously it's, you know, it's not an easy thing for anybody who's someone with lived experience to do, and she absolutely did want to be here today to do it herself, and would have been if she could. But I think her story covers off quite a lot in terms of, you know, what we're doing work-wise, but also culture of care, peer support, volunteering, and how that lived experience is so valuable to us.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Tolu.
I suppose I was just going to add into the fact that other than the debrief that happens after every incident, we also have a we also have a restrictive intervention oversight group that actually looks at every single use of restrictive interventions, of which this would be an example. Also ensure that we are assured that it's only being used where it is absolutely necessary, but also to take any learning from where it's been used and where actually things could have been done differently. So, and that ties into our other processes in terms of learning from incidents. But it also takes advantage. We also link up into our complaints service to ensure that any complaints coming through that, we're also picking up on that to ensure that we have that overarching oversight of how, where and when you use restrictive interventions, and that it's only used where it's absolutely necessary.
Polly, thank you for that. Well, look, I thought that was a really powerful presentation, and Bersha, thank you for your support in talking us through it. I think the board would love to just send our thanks to Amy and wish her all the best for the future. And I think this sort of real understanding of real people and what they go through is so powerful, because it's easy, particularly perhaps for some of us who are slightly more distant from the patients, you know, to make assumptions about things. And when you see the patient speaking like that, it's really, really powerful, both for us and for colleagues who are in direct contact with them. So thank you very much indeed. We'll better move on, I'm afraid. Time is going.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Versha.
Bye.
Okay, well, that was a really good board story. Thank you, Debbie, for that. Debbie, can we move on then to annual complaints report?
Yeah, not so interesting, because obviously you see the quarterly patient experience report, which includes this data. So this is just the annual 24-25 summary. So there should no real surprises in here at all. As I've been reporting all year, we have seen quite a reduction in MP complaints in 24-25 compared to previous years. Our numbers of complaints per patient contact are broadly the same as they were the year before, and our complaints tend to be 50% of them around care and treatment, which isn't surprising. Table 14 and 15, I just wanted to draw to your attention because it's a breakdown of the percentage of complaints that are upheld, partially upheld or not upheld by the themes, which is something the board have previously asked to see, because obviously we report on the number of complaints we receive and the number that are upheld or partially, but you've asked for that breakdown previously, so you can see that. So other than that, I'm happy to take any questions.
Thanks so much, Debbie. Sally?
Debbie, I wondered if we needed to reflect on our, the way we report on complaints in the light of the sort of wider discussion around complaints. There's an issue nationally around learning from complaints and then embedding that learning. I'm sure you've picked that up, around all the work that Penny Dash is doing. And when I looked at the report and then went to section 5 and having looked at some of the sort of national narrative that's going on around this, I suppose what I asked myself was, well, how would we know that we are distilling out the learning and then embedding in the learning? Because our report doesn't really go into that too much at the moment. I don't know if I know you'd be very tuned into more than I would be in terms of all that national dialogue around complaint systems and the critique of them.
So this report is currently quite prescriptive about what's within it as a board annual report. Those sorts of things would go into, and if we feel that's missing, we can start to pull out a little bit more into the quarterly report. And often, Sally, those complaints are also incidents and other things that also pull into the quarterly patient safety report that we see into the Quality Assurance Committee. So what we don't necessarily explicitly do in that is say, this was an incident, this was a complaint. We talk about learning in its widest context, but if it's helpful, we can try and pull out where, often something isn't a complaint in isolation.
No, I'm just thinking about, we've done all the analysis and what did we learn and how do we know it's embedded, and whether that isn't, that there needs to be more focus on that. But it's only because I've, been reading all the Penny Dash stuff recently.
So in the quarterly report that comes to the Quality Assurance Committee, which has got a few pages of everything, the kind of what we've done and the themes and what we've done about them, we can make that more explicit, Sally, that's incidents and complaints in its widest context. It isn't any one particular area of learning, if that makes sense, or any MTIP stream that makes that learning. It's a collective. We have a meeting weekly actually that pulls together safeguarding, patient experience, patient complaints, incidents, so that when we do learning and look at learning, it is in its widest context to pull everything and triangulate rather than look at everything in silos. But we can make that clearer in the quarterly
what
report.
We're learning from it as a trust. Thank you.
Okay, anything else? Okay, thanks very much for that then, Debbie. 6.3 medical appraisal and revalidation. Tolu, looks very positive.
So we have a duty to provide a report, an annual revalidation report to NHS England, and this is the report for the 24-25 year. And I guess the key things for the board to be aware of is there are no outstanding actions from the last year. of the 140 doctors who have a connection to the trust, 135 completed their appraisals for last year. 4 of them were approved as delayed, and that's due to long-term sickness absence. And there was just 1 that missed the appraisal altogether. That's been followed up because that may well require a referral to the GMC, but we're just walking through the process at the moment. Questions?
Any questions? No? That's fine then. Thank you very much. Where are we now? That's revelation 6.4 then, R&D.
So I have got Kate with me as our head of research, who will give a very short summary. Over to you, Kate.
Kate,
Hi,
if you
good
can
morning.
just pick out the key things, Kate, and then we can just have a discussion. Thanks.
Yeah, no problem at all. Good morning, everybody. So this is the annual report for the research and development for Berkshire Healthcare. Like previous years, predominantly most of our research has been hosted national projects. Whilst we might have seen a decrease in the projects that we've hosted, and with the participants that we've recruited, we've actually seen an increase in our performance. We've got a stronger foundation now for research assurance moving forwards, and it's more embedded in services. So research is mentioned and as an agenda item in performance, patient safety quality meetings. And we're also seeing an increase in nursing, midwifery, allied health professional-led research as well, which is in keeping with the nursing strategy. So, I mean, you can see for yourselves that we're doing some really good work with regards to embedding research into clinical care. We have got a bit of a renewed focus for the UK with regards to the 10-year plan. Research has got its own work stream, so I suspect over the coming years we'll see a bit more of an increase. Do let me know if you've got any questions or any comments. I'll be happy to take them.
Mark.
Yeah, Kate, thanks ever so much for a really comprehensive report as ever. In your recommendations for the board, you ask us to provide support to the delivery of your strategy. And I was really just questioning, what can we do beyond just simply agreeing with your paper and doing that? What other forms of support do you think that we as board members could be providing to you?
That's a really good question, and it's one that Tolu and I discussed. I think it's around that visibility, being an advocate for research, and the language is quite powerful. So I think research has always been seen as a gentleman's pastime. In just to be honest and frank, that's what it's been seen as an additional extra, and that's mostly because of the way it's funded through the Department of Health and Social Care. It doesn't come through core funding; it comes through external funding. So I think there is something around the culture of our leadership and our senior leadership teams in using that language and considering it as business as usual. So when we've got work streams where we're bringing in quality improvement and we're bringing in innovation, why can't we bring in research colleagues as well to support and represent? So I think the ask is to continue to support as you do, but maybe enhance it by being an advocate for research, if that helps. Does that help answer your question?
It does. Certainly, we might need feeding information when we do our board to ward talks, or and we go and visit various services. If we had an opportunity to understand where some of that research was taking place and how we could visibly support it, as we do, requests are often made to us for well-being and freedom to speak up, etc. And we try to promote those and give our support. If we could find examples, that would be really useful, or I would find it useful.
Yeah, I take that action for sure. Thank you for that feedback.
Thank you.
Barry.
Thank you very much for the report, Kate. It was very, very comprehensive. I've got a couple of questions for you. I noticed reading it in one section, and I didn't mark down which. So it's you write capacity funding is being used to sustain clinical and research governance roles. And do I understand that that's not sustainable and that we need to rethink that's my first question? And my other question is around, when I looked at the participants, they were made a lot, 600 plus mental health. Do we have I should know this, having been. Where's the ethical overview? Where's the ethics committee?
Oh, okay. So I can answer your second question first. So the ethics is now performed centrally by the Health Research Authority. It's no longer in its silos, attached to different universities and attached to different regions. So it goes through the Health Research Authority, who perform the ethical review on that project. So you have there is more of a centralized oversight. And then part of our setup for confirmation for capacity and capability, we work with the teams to operationalise that. So the ethics has already been sought and has already been approved, and any conditions met before we host any research projects. Does that answer you? Are you comfortable with that?
Sort of, yeah. I was just thinking, you know, people admitted under the Mental Health Act, and then they become research participants. Where do we take an overview of that? That's basically it.
Yeah, so it's to do with the capacity side of it, but maybe that's something that we can discuss with the non-execs outside of this meeting, and I can provide you a little bit more. Yeah, that's fine. And then with your first question, it's very well spotted. Yes, we do use research capacity funding. It's non-recurrent. All of our funding is non-recurrent. I think as we move forwards, oh, she's dropped off. I think as we move forwards, part of the reimagined research strategy will be to increase those opportunities to bring in commercial and industry research, and then by doing that, we'll then grow our pot for funding. It's a little bit of a concern, but it's not anything that we're not managing at the moment. But thank you for highlighting it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Sonia.
Yeah, Kate, mine was in similar vein because I sort of saw the funding levels. So I wanted to check, have you got adequate funding? Because it's such a comprehensive document with so much great initiatives clearly coming through. So it really was, when you're asking, let's up research, do people have the capacity to do so? And I was wondering, do they feel it's added work pressure? But likewise, have you got the funding was just on my mind.
Yeah,
but happy
that's
to
really
pick it up offline. Being new, would love to support and be an advocate, Kate. So happy to pick that up offline.
Thank you very much, and thank you for your kind comments. It is something that I think we will be looking at with the research strategy. The research strategy is hopefully coming to board in January, but I will be circulating it out to individuals, so you will be having a chance to feed into that. And I would definitely welcome some of those challenges when we're looking at those plans, because it is difficult. We do have to run as a bit of a business, and I've got to keep Paul happy as well. So it's very much like making sure that we can sustain what we're doing and growing. So yeah, it's a long process, but I appreciate the support. Thank you.
Okay, thanks very much, Sonia. Kate, can I just add my thanks to you for your enthusiasm and commitment to this, and also very gratifying to see the research, you know, having involvement with the clinical practice and not just being seen as something on the side. It's really important, both for the credibility of research in the staff's eyes, but also I think you know, we've got to get value out of whatever we do. So thank you very much indeed. Thank you, Tolu, for that.
Thank you.
Okay, we better move on. Quality Assurance Committee. Sally, anything you want to say from the last meeting?
I'll just say a couple of things. You can see there was a presentation on the Right Care, Right Person initiative, which was the issue that first evolved in about November 2023, and it was around police involvement in terms of dealing with people in mental distress. And trying to reduce those involvement, and also get the appropriate people in the system talking to one another. And I think that the important thing about that presentation is that we've got very good relationships with Thames Valley Police. There has been a reduction in the 136 detentions, although that could be that our place of safety was sometimes out of use, but generally, given that there was a lot of concern about that, initially, it seems to be working very well. There were 2 quality concerns that were added. One was around Orchard Ward, which colleagues will know we've had long-standing concerns around, and it was just around strengthening the leadership of that ward. And the other one was around the community health teams, which Debbie might want to talk a bit about in the next section of our meeting. But it's around looking now where we've had 18 months or so of transformation, and it's around reviewing some of the systems to make them more streamlined. And the final thing I should say is we've still got, or bring to the board's attention, is the National Patient Safety Alert, which again is a long-standing issue around bed rails. We're not compliant. However, most trusts, or nearly all the trusts across the region, aren't compliant, and at the moment it's around looking at a systems approach, a regional approach, to ensuring that there's an oversight of patients who have been discharged from the service but are using bed rails in the community. So that's all I'd want to bring to the board's attention, but I'm very happy to take questions on the minutes.
Thank you, Sally. Any questions? No? Okay, can we move on to learning from deaths and guardians of safe working? Tolu?
So again, this is our Q4 report. Key things for the board to be aware of, the fact that obviously this brings together all our processes around review, quality assurance, and learning from deaths, and brings it all together in one place. In the last quarter, we've had of all the second stage reviews, none of the deaths were a governance cause for concern. There were 2 reviews that identified poor care where learning has been identified, and this has been implemented through the relevant divisions. We've had 10 reviews that involved our service users who had a learning disability. And of course, we are working through our leader processes, which is processes for those individuals. And I will take questions if there are any.
Well, I just got a comment, Tolu, on the learning from deaths report, and I'm delighted we've now got the diversity analysis done and presented in the table, by ethnicity, etc. I think we were struggling a bit to get the right data, but it seems now to be working, so that's really important for me. So thank you for that. Any other questions on learning from deaths? Guardians of safe working?
So for the Guardian of Safe Working, again, this is a report we've got to provide on in relation to our resident doctors at BHFT. For the last quarter, there were only 2 cases where exception reports were provided, but again, those have been addressed with the agreed time off in lieu. Completed in a timely manner. We do not have any particular concerns in relation to this, and we do not anticipate any breach going forward. So I will take any questions if the board has any.
No, it's very, very well regulated. Thank you very much, Tolu. Okay, we'll move on then to executive report. Julian, questions to the report?
Yeah, thanks, Martin. Good morning, everybody. Yeah, I'm taking it as read. I just sort of highlight the fact, actually, in relation to Martha's rule, we've just been talking about a whole range of patient safety issues. I just sort of commend Debbie and her team, because as you can see, kind of Martha's rule was rolled out across the NHS as a patient safety initiative, but only in acute trust, because that's where the tragic case of Martha Mills actually took place. But Debbie immediately looked to see how we could adapt it in a kind of mental health and community physical healthcare settings. And on the back of that, being quite influential about how you kind of shape it across particularly highly dispersed organisations with many buildings and everything else. So I'm really pleased that we've been at the forefront of that work, which offers another sort of check and balance around patient safety and provides some greater assurance, particularly for family, friends and kind of loved ones as well, really. Other than that, let's take as read, Martin.
Any questions? I assume, Julian, that at a future board we'll do a bit about the 10-year plan and implications and all the rest.
Yeah, that's right, Martin. Obviously, the plan was published after the sort of papers sort of came out, and then when the papers came out, it was 168 pages. So perhaps we can talk about how we can best digest the plan, and maybe in part 2 of the meeting.
Someone told me that we ought to use be modern and use AI to summarise it to 1 page or something.
Yeah, Yeah, good luck with that.
Okay, anything for Julian? Thanks so much, then. Finance report, item 8, Paul.
Thanks, Martin. Now on page 186 of the pack, this is the first finance report of the new financial year. So we've set a plan for the year of a 1.7 million surplus, which includes requirements around 17 million of efficiency targets. We've had a solid start to the year and we are on plan for the first 2 months, and indications from July's close looks like we're going to be on plan for quarter one as well. If we just take some of the key points, obviously workforce being one of the key drivers of our costs, we're containing workforce costs within plan and a 200,000 underspent year to date. So 400,000 under on substantive staff, slightly offset by assumptions on where we were going to be with temporary staffing. All the divisions across the trust are now operating recruitment controls in order to manage their recruitment in line with their expenditure control totals, and I think the position on pay is showing dividend of that. Workforce numbers overall and costs broadly flat over the last 4 months, aside the increase in temporary staffing that we saw in March, which is predominantly driven by annual leave cover towards the end of the financial year. Worth highlighting, we've got 2 new temporary staffing targets that we need to operate within this year as set out in the planning guidance. The first is requirement to reduce agency expenditure by 30% compared to last year. I would say we're making good progress given the early part of the year that we're in. So costs down currently 20%, not quite the 30% that we need. But in terms of financial value, that extra 10% equates to about £100,000. So we're 100,000 over where we should be. But as I said, making good progress, and Debbie is chairing a workforce group that's looking very specifically at that issue and is tracking individual arrangements in terms of when we expect those to conclude. From a bank staffing perspective, we need to reduce bank staff costs by 10%. Really good start to the year. Bank staff costs are down 18% year to date, which means we're about £500,000 under where we were spend-wise compared to this point last year. On placement costs, we've pretty much limited out of area placements thanks to the expansion of capacity that Poppy Ward has given us. Focus for the year now in terms of financial risk is on PQ placements and specialist placements, which are, well, certainly in the first 2 months of the year, were higher than what we anticipated and manifested as a pressure within the mental health budgets and their position against their control totals. Those are under review and I think have reduced based on the numbers I've seen recently. As I've said, cost improvement programme 17.1, there's a page in the report reflecting that. We have got some work to do in terms of reflecting actual delivery against some of the lines, and I think inclusion of the forecast will be helpful because although we phased the plan in 12ths, likelihood is some of those values will deliver later in the year. So I think we need to do some work on that, and we'll reflect that in the next report that comes to the board. On capital, we've included the capital plan for the year, which is a stretching 20.8 million, although 50% of that relates to leases that we will be taking on during the course of the year. We've also got 2.3 million of NHS funded critical infrastructure funding coming down this year, which will contribute towards the initial phase of the Jubilee Ward move. We've also agreed 2 million of works at our PFI sites, which will predominantly fund the completion of our place of safety at Prospect Park. And finally, we will begin the significant piece of work around the decarbonisation project at West Berks, for which we're getting 2.6 million of external funding via Salix, which we got notified of last year. To close, cash is still looking healthy. We're at 52 million, which is about 3 million higher than we expected, just due to where we finished the end of the year and timing in terms of when we set the plan. Expect that to reduce over the course of the year, driven by capital investment predominantly to 45 million. Happy to finish there and answer any questions.
Thank you, Paul. Sonia. Sonia's frozen again, I think.
Impressive. So it's a great start to the year. I wanted to
Sonia, your sound's not good.
frozen. Positive start, Paul. Just had a question that we can pick up in the performance call on the non-medical staff.
Sonia, did you want to just repeat your...
I'm struggling here with the internet. Paul, I thought it was very, very positive.
Thank you.
If we can pick up in the performance call just around the non-medical nurses, that's the only thing that seems above, but honestly, exceptional performance. Feel very, very confident that you're managing finances really well. So, but if we want to pick that up offline, honestly, I'm very impressed. And congratulations on a good start to the year to the team.
Yeah, happy to pick that up in finance committee at the end of the month.
Sally.
My question, Paul, is more for Teresa, and she probably thinks I've got a bee in my bonnet about this, but I haven't. I wondered, Teresa, whether you'd had any more thoughts around the PQ beds, because I know for some time, and we've discussed this, we've had a real run on female PQ beds, which we don't have. And given that, you know, we had 11 in April and 7 in May, whether you felt that, you know, the 5 was going to be adequate. Because even before April, we had higher numbers, didn't we? If I recall correctly.
Yeah, I don't know if the numbers are exactly right at any one time, Sally, but we have seen significant demand for female PQ beds, and we don't have any currently at Prospect Park. So we're doing some work with system partners in Surrey and Borders, but also through Oxford Health to look at female PQ demand. And exploring options around how we might want to address that as a system, whether that's through opening beds within one of our providers or potentially commissioning a independent sector so that we have those beds relatively locally. We've seen a real improvement in our PQ position. So through the back end of June, we currently have 2 patients in female PQ beds. So that's all we're using outside of beds, either at Prospect or over at Hoppy Ward. So it remains under review, a work stream with the provider collaborative, Sally, and we start that programme of work in earnest in September.
Right, it would be good to hear more about that. It's almost an equality issue, isn't it? We don't have any female PQ beds, but you know, it's just a thought. I don't answer that. It's me, stream of consciousness.
Your Virginia Woolf moment, Sally.
Yes, James Joyce.
James Joyce. Okay, all right. Can we move on to performance report then, please? Thank you, Paul. Very strong. Thank you very much.
Lovely, thank you. So I'll take the report and the scorecard as read. Just to note that we received the new performance oversight framework a couple of weeks ago. I'm really delighted that after some validation of our data and submissions, we've received notification that we are in segment 1, which is the best performing. We've got an initial meeting with Region on Thursday, and we'll be revising and updating the scorecard as we work through the actual trajectories. We've received the metrics, but not the detail in exactly what will be measured and how it will be measured. Just want to bring board's attention to the narrative that sits around our breakthrough and driver metrics. So if we go back to Amy's story at the beginning, you'll see some work that's happening there around restrictive interventions. We have seen an increase over the last year. Some of that is through improved reporting, but we do need to understand and using patient voice within that work to understand how we can improve both the use of restrictive intervention and rapid tranquilization, but also the impact on patients. You heard from Amy how distressing some of her experience of being given medication under restraint was. We'll work that through, and some really positive stuff in terms of our adult acute mental health length of stay. We've had 2 months of being under target, which is quite a feat, and demonstrates the work that all the teams are doing together around length of stay, collectively looking at the before, during, and after discharge. 0 inappropriate OPEs for 3 months. So again, sort of really positive that we're managing our acute bed base within a combination of PPH and poppy ward. And the area that we've got some continued quality improvement work is around perinatal access. That has been read all year. We've got a transformation programme underway, and might be something that we want to hear a little bit more about as they start to implement their countermeasures over the coming few months. Any other questions?
Thank you. Questions? Teresa, I've got a question on page 212 about clinically ready for discharge, where they're quite a lot higher than target. I must say, I always find it difficult to relate this to length of stay, but you can help me, I'm sure. And I'm just wondering what it is that's driving that or causing those delays. You know, we've got clinically ready for discharge, 431 mental and communities, 694. Can you just explain a little bit, just briefly, about that?
Yeah, of course. So patient is declared clinically ready for discharge when we no longer need to provide their care in a bedded-based environment. So if everything was ready and that patient could be discharged to either home or to another care environment, such as a residential or nursing home. So it's anything between the day that they could go to the day that they actually do leave. Predominantly around funded packages of care. So if you think about patients that are needing to go to placement after admission, often these are the most complicated patients now. Home first is the principle that we work to. So if you're needing to go into any sort of care provision, that is likely to extend those days between you being ready to go and being able to go. We're doing lots of work with our ICB colleagues around funding panels for Section 117 and for local authority funded packages of care. Often it's around finding the most suitable provision. What we don't want is a failed discharge, and we monitor our readmission rate to make sure that discharge planning is as effective as possible.
Yeah, thank you very much indeed for that, Teresa. Sally.
Teresa, I just wanted to congratulate you and the team on the mental health acute average length of stay. That is a significant reduction, you know, from the 42 to the 32. And my sense is if you were to benchmark that, that would be pretty good compared to comparable providers. And I know it can be so difficult sometimes because, you know, you're working with clinical judgment, aren't you? So I thought that 32 was quite remarkable. What I was also going to say, and you mentioned, is it, you know, the perinatal service, although there's had all this focus on it, it continues to decline, really, doesn't it, in terms of its metric? Although I know they're a very good caring service when you go to visit them, because I have visited them.
I think the challenge we have with the perinatal service, Sally, is we need the referrals. So it's having the teams based and doing that interface in with primary care, midwifery, etc., to really try and promote the service and for them to be thinking about what additional value that team could bring. I know in certain areas they've started to join the family hubs, so really trying to be a bit more embedded in local provision. But it is a concern. Birth rate has dropped, so that will explain some of the access trajectory being slightly higher than we're able to expect, but we should be receiving more referrals than we currently do, and the team are really working on that with our system partners to help generate that activity into the team for the specialist intervention.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Sally. Any other questions? Let's move on then to trust strategy outcome measures. Alex.
Thanks, Martin. So for the benefit of Sonia as a new non-exec colleague, Sonia, this is a review of our performance against the key outcome measures the board agreed, so that we can understand as a board how we're doing against the Trust's corporate strategy. And these are outcome measures that align with the key themes of our strategic impact. What's also good about this part of the agenda is we've got a digital update from Mark, people and culture from Jane, and green plan from Paul. So these all support the overview of these outcomes here in a bit more detail. Highlights, we've got our reduced turnover rate, and if I just connect a few things. So on the improved mental health inpatient services and the safety culture benefit of reducing our configuration on acute adult wards to 18 beds per ward, and the introduction of 2 single-sex wards. In Prospect Park, we have our lowest turnover rate actually in the trust, underneath the 10% stretch target that we have. That is a sign of real stability and cultural impact, not just from the safety culture elements of the work that's going on, but if we connect back to the patient story and the lived experience work that we've got happening in Prospect Park and culture of care, this is all having the effect of improving the culture for staff and patients, and we can see that in the reduced turnover, which is fantastic. Time to care on digital, we're going to have an update from Mark, so perhaps we can get into a bit more of a detailed discussion in his section. Key areas that are slightly behind target but making good progress are the carbon emissions. Again, we've got the green plan update. We're expecting a bit of a catch up on carbon emissions, some great investments and impact outlined in the green plan. And sustainability, I think we're being a bit hard on ourselves around those outcome measures in terms of finance. We just heard from Paul's update. We're on plan for Q1. We have a significantly larger element of recurrent cost savings compared to other provider organisations that is impacting our underlying position. So really good improvement there. And although we're under the stretching target of 10% on patient experience from the tool I Want Great Care, we are making progress and improving the uptake of that tool, and indeed the learning and improvements we can make from that feedback from patients. So just wanted to highlight the year 2 position. We are in the process of reviewing and refreshing these outcome measures as part of our trust strategy refresh process, and in the October 2025 board strategy discursive will bring some proposed amends alongside all the contextual work that we need to get to grips with around the 10-year plan and our impact into the future as a key player in this system as a mental health and community provider. So I'll leave there, acknowledging we've got some detailed discussion on some key elements of these outcomes coming up, and happy to take any questions.
Shall we go on, and then we can perhaps take the questions probably in the following bits, Alex, is that right?
That's great. So I just introduce then Jane for an update on, it is Jane next, isn't it? Sorry.
Yep.
On the people and culture. Thank you, Jane. Let's get a bit of a flow.
Thank you. Just to echo really what Alex said, this was our update. We're hitting our major measures. What we've included as well is an update on all of our programs of work behind all of those measures. I'm hoping that the presentation is self-explanatory. Happy to answer any questions if you want to do so. Really just a little bit of an update on what we're starting to work on this year. So we've just concluded our Mars programme, and we'll be able to give you more information on that soon. We've completed our Res and WDES report with really interesting insights that will be coming to board soon. We've got a big focus on sickness to reference that national NHS plan. We've been given a target of 4.2% as part of that plan for sickness absence. Ours currently floats around 4.5, although we have a target of 3.5. And currently we have one of the best sickness absence rates locally in the NHS. So that's going to be an interesting area of focus for us, I think, coming up. And, some good news about things that we're introducing, like our interview questions in advance, that we're going to do a trial on that. That's to help our neurodivergent staff. We've got some work around the talent, so the talent review that was taking place, and we're ahead of the game in terms of what we're being asked to do at regional level around talent, because there's a very well established process here from before my time here. And then, we talked a little bit about bank and agencies costs, and just to re-emphasise that we're working very closely with Tolu around a direct engagement model, which we hope will reduce some of the costs of agency for us, but that's a work in progress. So that's a little bit of an update of what's coming up, as well as what you've seen there. Happy to answer any other questions if you've got any.
A very impressive piece of work, Jane. Thank you very much to you and your team. I think some really good progress there. Debbie.
It's not a question, Jane, don't worry. But I was just going to flag, so the Oliver McGowan training is read within this report. We have started doing some training for ourselves, paying for some training ourselves whilst we wait for the system training to get underway through Bucks New University, recognising that it is a requirement of the Health and Social Care Act. So I just wanted to flag that. I think it's quite important to note that we have started providing our own Tier 2 training.
Yeah, and at the moment we don't know how many will actually turn up, but we have got 100% all of in terms of attendance, planned attendance, with people on waiting lists. So we're confident that we should get good attendance at those programs.
Thank you, Sally.
Debbie, the nursing job evaluation, is that the issue around, and I'm paraphrasing, the perception that there's too many nurses appointed at sub-executive level? Is that?
No, I'll explain that if you want, Sally. The national team have introduced new guidelines around nursing roles at each level, and what we have to do is go through a process of looking at all of our current nursing staff and assessing their jobs against those new national standards. So that's that job evaluation work. Debbie, I'm sure, will give you more information from a nursing perspective, but the work that we are trying to do is on the back of that, streamline our job descriptions, update our job descriptions, and make sure that we benchmark people against those job descriptions. There's a very clear process that's been given to us around how we do that assessment and evaluation. So we're in the process of doing that with very closely with Debbie's team.
And either you or perhaps Debbie,
can I just come in a little bit on that? So nationally there are what we call job profiles for various jobs and bands of jobs, and over time there's a recognition that nationally, maybe locally, people have maybe not adhered quite so stringently to the profiles, and that's all to do with job matching, which came in with Agenda for Change. Nationally, they have refreshed those profiles, and what we have got in the organisation at the moment, and they're starting with nursing nationally, and it will be AHPs and others we need to do this piece of work, is we get a bit of scope keep. So over time, we've got lots and lots of different Band 5 job descriptions. And what we are trying to do is get to fewer Band 5 job descriptions that make sure they all comply with those job profiles, so that we can be assured that a Band 5 is definitely doing a Band 5 work according to their JD. A Band 6 is definitely, their job description definitely reflects a national what a Band 6 should be, for example. So that's what we're doing at the moment, Sally, streamlining down our job descriptions and making sure they match to the national evaluation for that job profile.
Right, thank you.
Sonia.
Just wanted to acknowledge this pack, Jane. It truly is very, very comprehensive. I thought the time to hire is an impressive trend line. The compliance, course compliance, there's some really significant progress. Also wanted to just being new and going under my own induction, Julian, that you have attended every single new joiners event over 14 years. I think that merits noting, Martin. Again, I don't know if everyone's aware, I mean, that over 15 years or through COVID, to not miss one induction sets a tone for a great place to work. I think it was just absolutely, Julian, extraordinary. So, Jane, the only other question for me is there's so many initiatives you're after. Are we able to do them all? Have we prioritized which ones really will move the dial the most? I was reading and thinking, wow, how do you get so much? Are you able to do so much? Or do we know, look, if there was 3 to 5, if we really just focused on those and got those done, we'd move the needle on some of those metrics that you're looking to drive. But phenomenal effort and just so much great stuff.
No, Sonia, that's a really good point, and we have tried to ease off on what I would call initiatives or big projects, and we have introduced better prioritization, and but also now introducing internally in the team some sort of a process of internal project prioritization as well as project prioritization, which would affect the trust as well. But there is a lot of work going on there. Some of it is regular work. So, for example, the appraisals that we have to do every year, that is regular work that we are doing, or it's improving what we have to do on a day-to-day basis. But you're right, we are trying to ensure that we don't overload the organisation with too much work going on at the same time.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Jane. Very impressive. Digital?
Thanks, Martin. I'll just introduce Mark in a second, but the context obviously is the NHS health plan for 10 years in which there's an expected shift of analog to digital. I think what we've done this time round for the board with Sonia arriving fresh and new is just to give a bit of a half-year update and reset some of the context for our digital strategy, within which, frankly, we are trailing ahead of what the NHS health plan is looking to do. So I think we are in a really good place in terms of take up new technologies, supporting patient self-care and so on. So I think we're in a strong place. Mark identifies we'll need to be renewing our strategic intent over the next year or so in line with our clinical vision for how we want to deliver services jointly in partnership across neighbourhood health and so on. So there's quite a bit to do strategically to help focus how digital supports us. And on that note, Mark, welcome. Mark's our Chief Information Officer and will give us that update. Thank you.
I think thanks, Alex. That's the introduction done. Yeah, I don't know what else to say really, other than I'll take the report as read and go for questions really.
Mark, could we just? That's fine. We're all familiar with it and we've read it. I'm just wondering whether I could ask a question earlier, which is about with the 10-year plan, the move, the left shift, the prevention, this sort of stuff. Do you think we've got the foundations in place to rise to these challenges? I'm thinking particularly about cross-organisational working, sharing of data, etc. Do you think that's sort of basically there and we can get on and implement it, or do you think there's some great chasm that we'll have to overcome? I'm just conscious that some acute providers and community providers don't share the same patient records. So I know we do. We have a very good system, but are there any blockers, do you think, to really making this motor as digital-based health?
I think there's always challenges in the system. I think we're in a fantastic place. From some of the things that we do as an organisation, being the only cloud infrastructure hosted digital service in the country, really means that in terms of scalability and integration, it's easier for us than it is anybody else, but that then means everybody else can be the constraint. And there's something about how we lead that process. So if you think what we've done this year in working with the much smaller organisations of voluntary sector organisations who couldn't possibly hope to invest in digital infrastructure to make sure that they can do some of this work with us, and we've instead invested ourselves and enabled them to run effectively, as the phrase I unpopularly use quite often, in our digital marketplace. So very much like Amazon, where we're creating a business marketplace infrastructure that allows everybody else to come and play at very low cost or no cost to them, which is fantastic, I think. The blocks for us really are in terms of finances and in terms of how much scalability of transformation we will do within the organization. So not in that digital agenda, but if you take something like referral management, at the moment, as an organization with some 90 odd different clinical services, our referrals come in from 90 odd different teams and are processed in a myriad of ways. And in order to get both economies of scale, involvement and consistency for patients, and to give our staff the ability to have a manageable task and workload, we have to try and consolidate those types of things. At the moment, we're in a lot of little teams scattered across Berkshire, and I think that will be a constraining factor about how quickly we want to or can or will change those types of arrangements.
Okay, thanks so much. Aileen.
Hi. I had a similar question to Martin, so I'll ask my other question. Saving 250,000 hours of operational time, that's phenomenal. I mean, that's absolutely amazing. How good is that? And you will expect me to ask this question because I tend to ask it most times. How are we translating that into monetary savings, or indeed headcount savings?
Yeah, and it's a really challenging one to answer. It's visible both in financial terms and in operational terms, because some of those implementations, some of those activities are across small teams. The individual team saving can be small, and you need to do that transformational change to scale it and to take the cash out. So I'm minded to talk about, for instance, recently we were talking about clinical community scheduling, and where things are scattered across podiatry teams, community nursing teams, MSK physio, saving in the way in which that scheduling is done has a benefit to the organization, which can be driven cash out. Every other market has shown us that is possible, whether that's the airlines, whether that's the gas man, whether that's the logistics companies, whether that's the supermarket chain type approaches. But within the NHS, we really struggle because we keep in those tight, small clinical teams. And I think it just comes back to that same agenda. How are we going to make it a big enough scale that we can reduce headcount, or probably more likely not increase as fast as we would like to? And I think for me, sort of endearing to that was the statement in the 10-year plan that says there is no chance of us meeting the workforce requirements in terms of headcount that were in the 2023 plan. And it's more about getting that productivity piece and upskilling our services, our resources and our staff to get to the point where they're doing a more sophisticated role, and the easy stuff has been automated. So that's a really long answer, Aileen, I know, but in short, I think it's still difficult, but I think we have delivered some of those savings into the organization, and they have come as cash out, whether that's as a softer enabler function or whether that's hard cash out. We've had a combination of both. I don't know whether, Paul, you wanted to add anything on that?
No, I mean, I kind of echo what you were saying, Mark, which is I think what we've done over the past couple of years is absolutely prove the concept and prove what we're able to do, and we've done it in a number of teams that have benefited a lot of services, but it's trying to get to the point now where what can we do that's scalable, that's really going to turn the dial so that it will give us the option around what we do with the time that's saved. There's a difference between saving 3 hours in a small team and saving thousands of hours across the organisation. What it does, it enables us to have that choice, whether we've got savings that we want to bank in terms of cashable savings, or if we want to do something different in terms of improving or using it to increase capacity and increase the amount of activity that we see. But I do think you're absolutely right. We've got to the point around that scalability piece now.
And presumably, Paul, it's going to help with our efficiency savings that we have to make to meet our financial goals as well.
I think it has to, Aileen. I mean, the other point I was going to make was, you know, there is a question about financial investment. There's also a question around prioritization of the investments we've already made as well. So this doesn't all have to be new. But yeah, I do think it's seen as one of the core elements that are going to help us through financial sustainability going forward.
Excellent.
Okay,
Thank you.
Thanks so much, Julian.
Yeah, thanks, Martin. Firstly, thanks, Mark, for the work. As you say, I probably take for granted where we are digitally because I've been around quite a long time. But it didn't happen yesterday, but often at induction when people come back to us or come from NHS organisations, they particularly notice where we're at. Just cheating a little bit, really. The 10-year plan, the digital bit is really very, very detailed. And if you think about what Secretary of State said at the weekend, he went for something that people would understand. He talked about the doctor in your pocket, which will be the NHS app, which we kind of all familiar with. It's an obvious thing to do. But I was thinking, okay, that I can see how that would happen, but behind the scenes, excuse the lack of technical knowledge, you're going to have to knit together stuff so that actually patients get all their things together. So at the moment, most of us are aware we've got connected care, which effectively we're all on separate electronic records across the patch, including social care and GPs, but we have a platform that puts it together so that in one place we can see it. So the knitting together, if you like. In the 10-year plan, it talks about legally mandating an SPR, a single patient record. Could you just explain what that is? So we'll all have our own different electronic records. That's a fact, that's a given. We've all invested heavily in that. And there's going to be this SPR, which presumably then will feed the app. What will that mean, Mark, for us, a single SPR legally mandated in layperson's terms?
Okay, so I think the main reason that they will have done that is twofold. One is that the patient privacy piece gets a lot of lobbying and has kiboshed a number of government schemes over the years. So they'll want to avoid that because it's a real showstopper for any kind of program of saying there's a single source of the truth. And then within organizations, there is a tendency to not get involved in things like shared care records or delivering data about patients across care settings. It's particularly bad in the acute sector, but amazingly is quite prevalent within primary care as well. Community and mental health trusts tend to be the glue that holds the rest of the system together, and therefore always participate in integration, cooperation, and collaboration. So I think there is, for us, it's good news. I think overall, I think if they get to that point where those legislative and operational barriers are instantly removed, it's really easy. And today, if that feature was available today on an NHS app, we could deliver it. It wouldn't take us very long at all. And it's potentially one of the best ways of getting to that patient-held single source of truth record. Because trying to do it monolithically through large suppliers, the Atos Origins of the world, has proved to be monumentally expensive and disastrous on a number of occasions across a number of government departments. So I think, yeah, if you're still going to try and get to that point where there's one patient record, and I think as we're getting into this digital space where we've got 160,000 of our patients using digital interactions, often it's in a silo. So if you're at the MSK service for a sore ankle, you're probably not seeing any other services. So if you happen to have an app for your exercises, it doesn't matter. But more often than not, the majority of patients that we see have 6, 7, 9 comorbidities. There's a danger that they'll be in our app and the RBHs and their GP surgeries, and just having one place to go is really important. And we're already at the moment working on putting in that same idea of a patient engagement portal. So how does the patient engage with our services, and linking that into the NHS app. So we've been working on that over the last 6 months. So again, it feels like we're on the same agenda page. What worries me more than anything else, Julian, is it's a big ask for the country, and even a 2-year time frame feels ambitious. So when is it coming? I'm not sure I'd want to put money on it. Let's put it that way.
Okay, well, there's clearly some really important challenges there, and I suspect that we're going to have a similar challenge in the care, because the number of nursing staff and etc. is going to be going down. I suspect it's going to just pop up demographics, opportunities for those who might have been previously want to be nurses can do everything else now. So I think there's going to be downward pressure, and with restrictions on international nursing, we're going to make it, I suspect, very difficult. So some of these things we need to use our digital in terms of helping patients keep well and know what to do, and focus our key staff on those that really need our care. Sonia.
Yeah, I just wanted to pick up, Alex. So you put in the chat about digital maturity. So just wanted to highlight, not all companies, no matter which sector, are dealing and grappling with how to utilize digital. So I think it's important to know where on that curve you are. And what I'm seeing is a lot of great initiatives being activated. So I just wanted to commend that. Like, you've actually gone off the starting block, whereas a lot of people just wait to follow. So actually activating and initiating is fantastic. So Mark, to you and the team and the whole organisation, I just wanted to commend that. I know we all just want to understand, okay, if you've got 4 days turnaround improvement and 40,000 hours based on transaction improvement, what does that mean? And thank you, James, for sort of posting some illustrations of where actually that does generate different benefits, whether that's for staff, patients, and other. But just, Alex, I like that you commented on where we're at. Sometimes you need to crawl before you walk, before you run. So I just wanted to acknowledge that.
Sonia, thanks so much indeed. Anything else from digital? Alex, can we move to green? Is it Paul, actually?
Yeah, thanks, Martin. I mean, I'll take the plan as read. I mean, it's a requirement that we have a green plan from an NHSE perspective, but I guess more importantly, it's important that we've got a green plan ourselves to support our strategic ambition around reducing our carbon footprint. I think the first thing I'd like to say is just a huge thank you to the Trust Green Group who've sat and pulled this together. Particular thanks to Justine Alford, our sustainability manager, who unfortunately left at the end of May, but her parting gift to us was the green plan that I'm presenting today. There's a number of actions within the plan. There's a mixture of things that we want to do and things that we believe will make impact on our carbon footprint, intermingled with some national requirements and national targets that we need to deliver that have been set out by government and NHSE. Things like phasing out EVs, etc. So, or phasing out, bringing in EVs, should I say? Don't want to phase them out. So we've got a combination of those in the actions. I think we've broke the actions down into core elements which are been recommended by NHSE. So digital workforce, clinical transformation, procurement, long-term adaptation, food, focusing on waste and medicines, the two that are going to be really crucial for us. And I think we've had reports over recent years that show that these are the two areas where they will really make the most difference to us achieving our sustainability ambitions, are around the estates and facilities that we operate out of. So we know we've got external funding from Salix to complete the decarbonisation at West Berks. We've got an ambition to do the same at Prospect Park, but for reasons that we're working through with the PFI provider, that's something that we will need to look at in the future. It's not ready to go now. Equally, Salix as a funding stream has been ceased by the government as well. So we are competing for more limited resources in terms of external funding as well. Also travel and transport, which given the nature of our services, being a community provider, is an area which may prove challenging in terms of delivering the reductions. But again, it's estates and transport where we need to focus our efforts, because that's where the greatest prize is. As with the previous Green Plan, we'll be reporting to the board on an annual basis, and I alluded that Justine had left the organisation. We do have a new sustainability manager joining us later this month, who obviously will be picking up this plan, running with it, and will be reporting back to the board end of this financial year with our progress against the first year's milestones.
Well, thanks very much, and thanks to our colleague Sonia.
Yeah, Paul, what is really hard is scope 3, right? So I've seen the report. I love the chart you put in with scope 1, scope 2, scope 3. Might be merit just understanding, okay, which initiatives might be reducing which, and realistically phase what you can do when. Like for me, I'd love to understand that. Probably, you know, again, happy to take that offline, but, you know, have we got those 3 areas? We're recognizing they're each, you know, in one, some in control and others are in control from third parties. The second point is just you might want to consider is it's fantastic you're linking to them to the SDG goals. On SDG 11, potentially maybe just merits mentioning the sub goal, because obviously I appreciate we're doing the EV launch, but you wouldn't want to look at that you're greenwashing, that you're going to improve the entire city just because of the EV cars. So certainly some industries seek to just specify the sub goal, not to try and pretend they can move all of that goal. So that was just 2 considerations for you.
Yeah, no, thank you for that. I mean, in terms of the we will be focusing initially on the direct ones, which are obviously the emissions that we've got more direct control over. Targets around indirect come later in terms of national ambitions around kind of 2040. So the plan as it stands at the moment is very much going to be focused on those direct emissions that we've got control over.
Okay. Thanks so much. Shall we move on then? Fit and proper persons test, Julie.
Yeah, this is
exciting stuff, Julie.
Exciting stuff. This is our annual assurance paper to demonstrate that we've complied with the requirements of the fit and proper person test. And just a request for board members, if your declarations of interest change at any point, just drop me an email, so because we do publish, we do keep the interests up to date, and they are published on our website.
Okay. All right, Mark.
Right. Yeah, just one minor thing, Julie. We seem to have lost Naomi's name and position on the declaration chart. I think it was the same on a previous edition that was printed or published before. It just needs to be amended.
Page 306.
I'll look at that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Where I am. Minor changes to the trust constitution, Julie?
Yes, we had to. We did a very, very light touch review of the constitution to make sure it's in line with the new Procurement Act. It's not a full review of the constitution, which we do every few years, but just making sure that we are compliant. And changes to the constitution need to be agreed by both the Council of Governors and the Trust Board, and the governors have approved these changes.
Thank you very much. Audit Committee, Raddy's not here, but any comments people want to have on the minutes? No? Okay. Council of Governors updates. I've just got a couple of things to... First of all, the Governors Appointments Committee has been working on the chair appointment, my successor's appointment. You're probably aware we had to go around again, so we're at the moment selecting recruitment consultants to help us, and that process will be going forwards. I wanted to acknowledge the Governor's excellent scrutiny of the performance of Trust, particularly in relation to commitment to patients and care. They've been really diligent. the 10-year plan uncertainty or comments about whether governors exist in the future is obviously going to be something they will be interested in and understanding, as we will. But for most of all, I just wanted to put on the record my thanks to the Council of Governors. I think we've got an outstanding set of governors. They're really helpful, they're challenging but constructive, and I want to wish them well. So thank you very much for that. Any other business?
Yes, Martin. Just very quickly, it would be remiss not to acknowledge this is your last board, and don't worry, my very lengthy speech will be for your leaving do, but I just thought it would be nice to say a few words publicly. Huge thank you, Martin, for the huge body of work you put down over the last 18 and a bit years. That's been recognised by certainly all my colleagues attending today, but the wider organisation, well, you're hugely well known and respected. I'm not just saying that. There was pretty much shock, actually. I had to do a lot of explaining about why you were leaving and the kind of term of office associated with sort of non-exec directors, because actually the connections you've made, particularly with certain staff groups and everything else, is deep-seated and really well valued. I think everybody who's attended a board and who's been part of your network has benefited greatly, just frankly, from your wisdom, your level of insights and the wisdom that you bring to it. And most importantly, I guess in terms of the public board bit, is you've really helped shape the way in which the board functions. In reality, kind of most organisations look very similar from outside. They have audit committees, they have REMCOMs and all the rest of it. It's how it all fits together. And Martin, that's where you've been absolutely unique and very special. So on behalf of everybody, thank you very much indeed.
Julian, thank you. I'm not going to do a long speech, but I did just want to say something. This is really an outstanding trust. Having seen its journey from when I first started, whenever it was, 2016 or something, and seen it progress, steadily progress, getting better and better day by day. I think it's a wonderful trust, and you and your colleagues and all the staff of the trust, I think, should be extremely proud. And whereas my background has been perhaps a little bit more turnaround type activities, here it's been about encouraging the trust to have confidence and develop itself. And it's a real privilege to observe that, really, to watch that. And I've really done nothing much to help, except perhaps the occasional little touch on the tiller. But it's fantastic, and I'm really proud of all of you. And I wish you every success in the future. I know you will, because it's a great trust. So thank you very much indeed, Julian, for your kind words. Okay, our next meeting is in September. Now we'll exclude press and the public for the remainder of the meeting. So thank you very much indeed. Thanks for observers. Are there any questions from our observers, by the way?